Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to our Building Thinkers in Math and Literacy in Action. I'm Erica Reynolds, the Director of Curriculum Instruction, and today we have Ms. Tina Kennis, our math coach, and Mrs. Kate Shakis, our district literacy coach, and we thank you so much for coming out today in this rain and cold, but we are hoping that after today, you learn a little bit more about what it looks like in your child's classroom, in math and in literacy. And then I will ask that if you have any questions that you speak into this microphone that I have up here, and we could do that at the end, or you could do it. It is a nice small group, but thanks again so much for coming. We appreciate it, and I hope you get some good information out of it. All right, so without further ado, they're going to get started.
Okay, so welcome. As Dr. Reynolds said, I am Kate Shakis, and this is Tina Kennis, and we are going to talk to you about how we are building our thinkers in Colts Neck through math and literacy instruction.
So just to give you an idea of how today's program is going to go, I'm going to begin with the first three sections here. With the math program overview, our district uses in K-5 Savvis and Vision 2024, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that program. And then I want to show you how that program is used in the classroom in the math block. And finally, I'm going to show you some supplemental resources that we use in mathematics in addition to our Savvis program. And then along those lines to share some parental resources with you in terms of family engagement.
And I'm going to be speaking to our reading program, which is called Being a Reader. We are going to be speaking about how we are building foundational literacy skills through word recognition in our primary grades, and then also building literacy skills through language comprehension as our students continue to move through into our elementary grades.
So without further ado, how do we build thinkers in mathematics? Well, as I mentioned, I wanted to begin with the math program that we use, which is Savvis and Vision Math 2024. This is a research-based, student-centered math program. It offers some really great conceptual understanding in addition to procedural fluency and, of course, your fact fluency as well. There's rich math applications to provide real-world infusion. There's alignment with the state and national standards as well, and this is a problem-based learning approach. So students, you'll see soon, students start off with sort of a productive struggle, and they work with that productive struggle to learn and understand and comprehend on their own, really kind of bringing that, that light bulb to their heads during the lesson. The visual learning with the program also provides some visual videos that go along with it. There's a digital platform and print platforms. We're going to talk about each of those things. And then the way that differentiation is embedded into the classroom. And I mentioned the real-world applications and the hands-on activities for students. So as I mentioned, the solve and share is how our math program begins. It begins with sort of this productive struggle where students are presented a problem, and they use their problem-solving skills together. Some work independently, but most of them are working together in small groups, and they kind of hash out how they want to approach this problem. At the end of some time, where the students are given that flexibility to have some productive struggle, their solutions are shared either in their small groups or to the class, depending on how a teacher may see fit to share that with everyone, or just in the small group that they're working in. You'll see this as an example of that happening this was in a third grade classroom where the students are sort of all in this small group here talking about what it is that they're working on for the day. And they're going to build that conceptual understanding of whatever concept is on hand during that period. From there, it moves on to teachers actually using a prescribed differentiation approach. So within the Envision textbooks, teachers' editions have these little pink check marks in there. And the teachers use these specific questions to differentiate where their students are headed. Perhaps a student needs a little bit more intervention. Perhaps a student is ready to move on to something with enrichment. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of reteaching. Perhaps another look video may be the thing that they need. So what you'll see is a teacher working with her students, really looking at those specific questions, and then using those, how the student does on those three questions to prescribe where they will go next. Okay? And that's where I mentioned the intervention, the reteaching, maybe some fluency or enrichment. application-based literacy as well. Okay, so here is where they can go from here. So teachers, based on the points that the students score on their quick check, will put them in either an on-grade level or an intervention or an advanced level, and that's where they can work through some of the supplements within the program to offer those different areas as well. Okay, so here's an example of what that might look like. Here's an example of a few students maybe just taking a visit back with the teacher to see and maybe get a little reteaching and understanding. This was a student who jumped right into her work, but the student sitting next to her wanted to take another look, so she hopped into her Chromebook and pulled up the Another Look video, which is just a little animation of what the lesson was at hand. And then down here in the bottom, you'll see a few students just working in a small group as well. I love these couple pictures here because this is where you might see differentiated small group happening with teachers, and at the same time you have students working in a hands-on application-based game learning on the floor here. And here's another group of students who just chose to work together on their independent practice or perhaps guided practice. And I mentioned that the Envision program is rich with opportunities to explore student learning. The Pick a Project option is one where, especially the examples that I'm going to show you today are from kindergarten, but I've seen some really adorable Pick a Project opportunities for students to build on their conceptual understanding. This one here was in Topic 11 in kindergarten, and the thinking and learning that was happening during this project was so amazing. I was watching a student, so this project here was about centipedes, right? And they also had the opportunity to work with dancing. But this one in particular was adorable. The students were taking little clay pieces and making their centipede from these little clay pieces. And then they would take 2 legs from their pipe cleaners and push them into the sides. Well, one student said, I'm going to make 15 little balls of clay, and I'll have 30 legs. And I said, how did you know that? And he said, well, if I have 5 here and 5 here, that makes 10. And then I'll have 5 here and 5 here, and that's 10 more, so that'll make 20. And then I have 5 here and 5 here, and that'll make 10 more, so there's 30. So the different ways that students are really, thinking and bringing about that conceptual understanding of the lesson at hand is so wonderful, and these really build those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
For the most part, they're watching the video, and it's mostly teacher instruction, correct?
For the most part?
Yeah.
No. No, not at all.
No.
No, I'm sorry. Did I give you that impression?
No, my kids don't talk about projects besides that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I apologize for that. This is one of the opportunities for students to be enriched within the classroom. So more. Yes. I'm sorry that you got that impression. No. Okay, so this is, again, one really cute opportunity for the Pick a Project. Now, in addition to those components that go through the lesson themselves, where the students are in their rotations, where they're always, either meeting with the teacher or working at the desk or using some sort of technology or providing some hands-on activities, there are additional resources for independent practice. The practice that may come home, you may see in the form of independent practice right from their workbook. They also have an additional practice book in K through 2. In 3 through 5 next year, we will be getting the additional practice workbooks as well. And there's a practice buddy and the Another Look video, which is just an additional opportunity for them to take a look at what the lesson is for the day. Okay, so how does that math block look? Hopefully this will clear up any misconception that you have that your student is sitting on a computer. I'm really sorry that you have that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There are a ton of components, as I mentioned, in Envision. It's one of the most rich math programs that I've seen in my near 30 years in education. So I'm really, really proud of what our teachers do with the components in mathematics and how they use their own autonomy to build that thinker in their math classroom. So this math structure that we use looks similar to this. Okay, so I'm going to explain what this might look like. You'll notice there's some rotations going across the top, marked 1 through 4, and down the side you'll see groups 1 through 4. This is not the exact picture of what every classroom looks like, but it is a good base of what the classroom structure sort of looks like. I have some pictures of some different classrooms as well. But the M represents, other than the acronym being math, which I think is pretty cute, the M represents meeting with the teacher. So at some point, if you were to look out in a classroom, you would see one of all four of these things happening simultaneously in a classroom. So you'll see some students that are meeting independently with the teacher, working independently at their desk, maybe using some technology, which could include one of those Another Look videos, yes. And then the hands-on activities would be like the games and the projects and things of that nature that they're working on as well. So in a classroom, again, taking a look at what each of those areas might look like, you may look into a classroom and see some students in the back working with the teacher, meeting with the teacher, at their desk, working independently, perhaps on one of the pieces of technology that we have available. And we have 3 supported technology programs in the district, and I'll go over those with you as well. And then finally, the opportunity for hands-on applications, okay, going around the room. So this is what the math rotations look like. Okay. As I mentioned, teachers have the autonomy to bring their rotations and flexibility of their classroom in. These are some examples of what that math rotation might look like. These are in order from K to 4, so you may see that the structure sort of increases as the students begin to rotate through different, from play, maybe in the K1 areas, into more structured learning in 3, 4, and 5. But you'll see some different variety of that MATH happening right within the small group rotations. Okay. Does this help give a better understanding of how the classroom works? Okay. So in addition to that rotation that happens in the classroom, some teachers on the elementary school level take a Google Classroom site and use a Google Classroom site to push out any of the resources that are available to their students in addition to the textbook and any additional assignments that may be there. And you will see that sometimes our teachers get creative and they have some things of their own. Yes, okay. So they have things of their own as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the supplemental math resources and the family engagement piece that I wanted to share with you towards the end, the supplemental math programs that are taught in our classroom are taught within our classroom. iExcel is one of the programs that we use. Extra Math is a program that we use, and Frax is a program that we use. These are all district-supported programs. The iExcel program is an adaptive platform, but it gives a real-time diagnosis of student learning. The one other thing about iExcel, which is really special in our district, is that when our students take the MAP test, their MAP scores are linked to iExcel. So their RIT score that they get tells them what they're ready to learn. And that score then translates to lessons that they can move on to build their understanding where they are. So this is a program that meets the students where they are and helps build and reinforce their skills from there. Extra Math is our fact fluency program. This is something that the students are on, should be just for a few minutes a day, but the one really great thing about Extra Math is that teachers can provide that differentiation. So for operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, depending on the grade level or the ability of your student, you may see maybe just addition is assigned, or then maybe addition and subtraction is assigned. But in addition to being able to assign different operations, teachers also have the ability to decrease the length of time students have to work on one, therefore building their fact fluency and building their accuracy and their speed at which they come up with the correct answer. So these programs are available for our students, and our teachers do a really great job not only progress monitoring where their students are with fact fluency, but then also assigning them based on where their needs are. So where one student may be working very quickly, answering a question within a second, it may take another student 2 or 3 seconds, but that frequency is being built and their fluency is being built, and as I said, that differentiation happens along the way. Frax is a program taught within the classrooms in 3, 4, 5, and is completely structured around fractions and the conceptual understanding of fractions. It is a game-based program, And our students absolutely love it. They start in 3rd grade and they go through 27 missions, and the 27 missions are in a sector. When they complete those 27 missions in a sector, they can go into the next sector. Usually a sector could take the entire year to work on, or it could just be whatever opportunity the students have within the classroom to work on that, maybe during fractions. But the students really love that opportunity to have sort of a game-based platform that builds conceptual understanding in mathematics and fractions in particular. Here's an example of what that might look like. Here's on the K-1-2 level. This is, I've been in school a long time ago, but I remember we used to use flashcards, so this is kind of more of a flashcard opportunity for students. But you'll see in K-1-2, this is 3, 4, 5, and then here's an opportunity where students are working together in the comfy seating on IXL, and then Frax is that there, starts again in 3rd grade. Okay. And as I mentioned, I was going to close with some family engagement resources for you. This was really very exciting. I know last year when we met and had, or a couple years ago when we met and had our parent home connection letters were sent home with each topic, and they're still available with each topic. But Envision has built up that family engagement site now that it's not just a letter. It's an actual interactive lesson opportunity for you with a QR code to just get into any topic in the Envision program at all. So here's an example of what this homepage might look like. It's sort of an overview of all the resources. It's got topics for every topic that you have here, and you'll notice that there are clickable links along the way. As you click those clickable links, you will see that it not only gives you that overview, how the math connects, it gives you an opportunity to go into each of those lessons, and it gives you some more clickable links to videos if it's something that you want to see, how that concept was approached in the classroom, how you can help at home, and different opportunities for you to have home activities. So not only is this available to you for your student in their grade, but the great part is, and you're welcome to take a screenshot of this, or if you want to save the QR code for yourself, you're welcome to do so right now, but you have the opportunity to go backwards or forward as well. So if your student is in 2nd grade and maybe struggling with something and you're thinking, okay, well, how can I best help him or her? Maybe you want to go back to the 1st grade book and see where that topic was the previous year and maybe build on some of those prerequisite skills. It's an opportunity for you to, to have access to all topics within the program just at your fingertips. And that was the last thing that I had to share with you guys.
If you can just go back to the slide that says MATH for us.
Sure.
And when you're talking about the centers, and just if you want to talk a little bit, when we're talking about this, students are not in this for about an hour. They don't stay. Can you
Right.
talk about like how
Oh,
they
sure.
rotate and what that time frame looks like?
Yeah, you may see that some of the actual pictures that are up here,
timers.
yeah, they have timers
Yeah.
that are built into their rotations. So the teachers will select a certain period of time, the student will stay in that rotation, the buzzer goes off, they switch.
And it depends on. It depends on the grade level for how long and what the lesson is and what they have going on that day for how long that center. A majority of our K-5, they're around 10 minutes each. Some teachers will see each group twice, depending on the day, depending on if there's a co-teacher in the room, depending on the instructional aid, depending on the needs of the class. So sometimes it's different. We've seen it done a bunch of different ways. Some of the teachers start off in small group. A majority of our teachers will start off and they will go directly into centers. So it depends on the grade level too and what the content is, but every student should meet with their teacher and get their individualized instruction throughout some type of rotation. Okay? Yes. How does this? So how does a small group get placed? That depends on, based on the day before. How do you know where your student is? It depends. You want to answer that?
Yeah,
'Cause
so the small groups within the classroom, they would be based on whatever the prescribed differentiation is from that teacher. So I'm trying to think if what is this?
Well, I think it's
Okay, no. Hold on, I just got to find that one page. Yeah, it was in here. So
Sometimes.
this is
Sometimes.
one way.
Not
Our
always.
teachers really know their students very well. So oftentimes, I will say, I just want to give a shout out to our teachers. Many of our teachers will know the answer to where their students fall before even getting to some of these quick check questions. But it's that interaction that happens during the solve and share. Remember I mentioned that the students are in that productive struggle. Oftentimes when students are in that productive struggle, you can get a feel for who may need an extra, a few minutes or maybe a second trip back at the meet the teacher desk, right? So the teachers are skilled in that and they have the autonomy to do that. There is a prescribed way to do it within Envision as well, and a lot of teachers do stick with just this prescribed way. But many teachers really understand where their students fall and who they need to pull for an extra small group rotation in terms of that. But no, it's not. I don't.
No, it's not like reading. No. So they use the day before. So some of the students may be redoing what the day before was based on their exit ticket from that, or based on the worksheets that they're working on with their teacher individually. It could depend on the topic test. It could depend on how they're answering or responding in the classroom. It depends. But they know them, especially by this time of the year. In the beginning of the year, it's a little trickier, right? So that's why they take like the pre-assessments like in September and October, and they may use different, like the MAP test and the beginning of the year, but now it's totally prescribed through how they're doing inside the classroom.
Yeah.
And those
that's why you
individualized
would see
assessments.
Some of the students are defined by either a color or a shape, and some student names are just thrown right up there. And it's oftentimes it's based on their need, and sometimes there would be reason to have perhaps a heterogeneous mix of students as well, right? Because you have someone from a higher level speaking with someone on a lower level, and there's a connection there made with peers that may not happen in any other way, but when it happens with peers, it makes a more meaningful connection with them. So oftentimes the groups are organized by the teacher using their own sort of, I want to call it local data, right? Local to their own classroom. And yeah, right. Yes.
I just had a question on enrichment's philosophy around reading comprehension, especially for the younger grades. My daughter's in second grade, and she struggles immensely with this curriculum because there's so much reading comprehension required to just even do the math homework when they're still building their reading skills and learning. So if they can't, understand the paragraph, which is often multi-step, they can't answer the question. And for me personally, like, that was a really big struggle with me and my child, and it lowered her confidence because if she can't understand the question,
Right.
it's combining literacy and math
Yes.
in one when they don't even know like their math facts yet. So I'm just understanding like for like kindergarten, first grade, now we're in a better place because second grade she's a much better reader, but like in those foundational years when you're building those skills and they're not even reading yet, I found that like very, very challenging. So I'm just was curious like what's their, I guess, reasoning behind that at such a young age.
The reason behind
So much reading comprehension.
The reading
Like
comprehension.
with Envision.
Why there's so much reading comprehension. I mean, we didn't write the program.
Yeah.
But the program is, the types of questions that are aligned to the program are aligned to like a lot of the state assessments and what the state standards are and what students are expected to do. So they, the state expects us as educators to make sure everything is cross-curricular and that things are intertwined, and so that students are, it's not separated, and that's just where the state standard is with that. But some of the worksheets that, and in the book with the additional practice workbook and things like that Miss Kenna showed, are supposed to help so it's not so much reading, to try to break that part down so it's not as intense. And then like when she showed you the different questions, like not every student with the star, like going back to where the pink stars are, like with, you're right, like with the check marks, so that they're not expected to do so many reading problems. So someone that may struggle with reading a student may only have to do one of those, and the teacher would work with them. Does that make sense a little bit? No, and I understand, and you're not the only person that said that. No, and I understand that. I understand that. With the homework, yes,
As a parent,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What students are expected to do right now is a lot. It's a lot, and it's definitely a lot more than what we were expected to do, so I totally hear you, and I think that's why this really cool QR code that they just came out with is going to help us as parents, because I have to look it up many of times as well. As a parent who is in schools all the time, in third grade, I'm like, what happened? I'm like, hold on, I need to go back and look, so I totally understand.
Well, but even like when we're doing homework, I'm being a paragraph, like, wait.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything has to be analyzing and thinking critically. I agree. I understand. If you don't understand as an adult, I
Yes.
understand. Yeah. So that's why we try to break it up so that they're not doing the entire page, that we're looking like at these check mark assessments. That's how a lot of the groups are also put together too. Because these are like, did my student understand? And if they understand, then we can go back and work on that. But we understand where you're coming from, and yes, you are not alone. Yes, I agree.
On the kindergarten level, you will notice that some of the assignments, I was on this page here, these are to be read by a parent or a teacher, right? So there are some pieces in there that are designed to be read to the student. And it's actually an interesting conversation that my counterpart and I, Kate, have very often, is that we talk about the reading comprehension piece and how so often words that students wouldn't be exposed to, like solve or explain on a lower level, are now words that become sight words to them because they're being asked to read and comprehend sort of on an earlier age. And that exposure to those words is something that really brings about that word recognition as well. And I know that's part of Ms. Shakis's presentation today. So yeah, we go back and forth and
We do.
and
We have
have
lots of conversations about it.
about that too. Because
But if
that
they
word
see it this many
recognition-
times, they'll be able to orthographically map it in their head. And Tina's like, in English, please.
Yes, we love that. So yeah, so just to be able to have that constant recognition of the words and the comprehension, and I know it's happening on a much smaller level, but our students are really great performers too. So we're being met with such great success that it's difficult to look at that as a detriment to the student when you kind of see how strong they grow throughout the year by being exposed to that starting in kindergarten.
And they do develop their confidence, as you said. You know, you were like in kindergarten first, it's super hard, but then moving into second grade, as their comprehension increases, as their reading skills increase, and their word recognition increases, it gets easier for them, and their little brains are just kind of, they become wired into the process and the thinking that, as we talked about, we're building those thinkers. So they learn how to think in a little bit of a different way, which is harder for us as parents because we didn't necessarily learn how to think that way when we were moving through school. So as somebody who, I recently left the classroom about 1.5 years ago, and I was in a math classroom, and I did teach math also besides literacy, and we would joke that I was the literacy side of the brain and my counterpart was the math side of the brain, and if one of us was absent, we only had half a brain. But I had to learn how to teach math the way it is now, and it really actually helped my mathematical thinking because I am truly a literacy person. So it does pan out for them down the road, and we've talked about the skills that they're building now. They will use in Miss Kennis was a high school math teacher, and they use them later on in algebra and in geometry and pre-calculus. So there's all of these there's all of these skills that they're on this little bit of a productive struggle with now that it does help them down the road. It does pan out. Now it's hard because it's just hard, and being a parent's hard. What we do is really hard.
And I thank you.
So all New Jersey math programs are literacy. A lot of them.
Yeah.
And when we looked at a lot of the other programs, a lot of the other, like this at least spirals, and that the system is the same. A lot of the other ones don't, and it's very disjointed how the curriculum is taught. So it's all over the place. Like this is aligned to how they're supposed to know exactly, and they keep updating it. And what do you want to say?
I just wanted to say that a combination of what the two of you were saying is that there's this vertical spiral that
There
happens
it is.
in mathematics.
That's the language.
And
Thank you.
I know that my classroom experience was in a high school. So when I see what's happening in the elementary school, I'm watching those concepts form at the absolute basic level, that early learning level, and watching that learning spiral throughout the vertical aspect of the curriculum is what's really very impressive about the opportunities that students have in an early age to start thinking, expressing, explaining, speaking. There's a whole component in Envision that is meant to explain to me, right? Convince me, it's called. Convince me that you know how to do this problem. And it's a way of expressing either pictorially for some of the younger students or with written words to explain their thinking. And that's what's happening as you spiral along. So when I see some of the different methods that are used in second, third, fourth grade, and I watch those, even something as simple as the distributive property. I watch that distributive property used using numbers, knowing that soon enough students are going to have to use this property with letters and variables, and that connection is starting at this low level with our students.
Each chapter is so different from the next. I don't see the connection between specifically my fourth grader. I feel like one day she's doing fractions, and one day she's doing geometry, and one day she's doing this. Like, I don't see like the progression there.
Okay.
You know? That's where like I'm trying to learn like how
Yeah.
she's not struggling. I know a lot of people struggle with this curriculum. I'm sure it's not just this curriculum. I'm sure it's everywhere in New Jersey. It is. You know, like I think a lot of kids are really struggling. Has anyone seen that new website about I sent this to you? It's like how so many kids are struggling in New Jersey with just like school. Yeah, I forget what it's called. But so like I just don't know why like it's always jumping. Like for me, like I don't see how they can actually absorb the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and actually learn it when it's moving so fast.
Yeah, okay. I think that the progression, like I said, is cyclic and spiral.
That's
So,
the
yeah.
reason I even mentioned it right now. You just said that, so I was like, I can't.
it,
pick up,
I
like,
think,
how
I don't
it
know,
moves fast.
it does move fast in that there's a lot of different opportunities for students to visit the same topic. And that's where I think I was explaining where some of these opportunities that students are used to explore a topic are the baseline learning levels that they're going to use as they increase grade by grade throughout the year, or throughout their schooling, not
I think
just
what's
the year.
tricky is like within one topic, there will be like 4 strategies to
Yes.
solve, which
That is tricky.
I
Yes.
get they would
Yes.
want to have that multiple strategies, not
And then
just
that
one
goes
one.
away. The older they get, it goes away, and then they can pick a strategy, and they don't have to worry about it. So
Okay.
yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
It's the first time learning to absorb
Yes.
4 different
Because some,
strategies.
so
Yes.
the point of that, and then we'll move on to literacy, because I don't, but the point of having it with all of those is because everybody in this room could pick a different strategy that works for them, and then, like, when you have to take a test, you know, you just pick the strategy that works and goes, but it does assess them on all of them, which is a
That
bit
makes
tricky.
sense.
I agree with you on
I
that. Because
understand
not
that.
everybody understands all of the strategies. We actually just met with third grade about that.
Yeah,
last week.
that was my issue. I understand teaching
Yeah.
multiple ways for different
No,
learners.
I
but
get
the
it.
test
We
requires
just talked to
you
them
Yes.
about that.
use compensation.
Do we have to test on all the different ways if
Yeah.
it doesn't work for everyone? Yep.
Yep.
And there was a strategy my daughter loved, and then one that was not clicking
Yep.
with her, but then she had to use the one she didn't
Yeah,
like,
we
and
just-
she got the answer wrong. But I was like,
Yeah.
so what's the point?
But I totally get what you're saying, and we actually, you know, this sounds corny, but we're always reflecting on what, and I truly mean this, we're always reflecting on what we're doing and how we can always get better. And so one of the conversations that we had last week was, do we need to really assess them on all of these things if they can pick one? And then we worked a lot with our special education teachers to work on, with Dr. Beck. Thank you for being here. I'll give you a shout out. And sorry. But one of the things we worked on with our special education teachers is, do we have to go through every single lesson in the unit because it's a lot for their little brains? And what we did is we were able to map out with the help of our Savis program, who has it all done for us. They just have to do these X amount of lessons to meet what the goal is for the end of the year. And so a lot of our general education teachers came in too, so that if it's something we're running out of time or kids are really struggling, these are just the things that we need to hit on by the end of third grade, by the end of fourth grade. And if you have these, then we're good to go. So instead of putting that pressure on them and that anxiety of we have to keep going and we have to keep pushing, we could stay on this lesson for a bunch of days and that's okay. We don't have to go to all of them. So we're constantly doing that and trying to make it what's best and work for us here and what our student population needs. And every year it is different, but we are constantly doing that. Yeah. And I mean that, like, we really, really are.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that for the camera and on the microphone.
I think
We really
that's
are.
one of our, not to, I think that's one of our, yes, I think that's one of our biggest strengths here is that we are constantly reflecting and thinking about the work that we're doing with our students in our classrooms, what's working, what's not working, how can we make it better. We're aware of the level of stress and anxiety that some of our littlest learners come in with, and we're, cognizant of that at this point too. And I think that there's a constant ebb and flow with our practice, and our programs are constantly evolving as well as, we find new things all of the time within them that help us, help our teachers, help our students, will help you as parents, and I think that's a super important practice to have just in general.
And
In a school.
we're all part of different groups, even Dr. Beck and even Dr. Garibay, like talking about what we're doing within our county, within our regional, within different school districts that are like us. So we're always talking to them too about what they're doing that worked, and we share a lot of that. So we're not just like in our own little bubble. All right, Miss.
Thank you.
Great job, Miss Kennis.
Thank you.
Miss
Does
Shack,
anyone
Mrs.
need to
Shack
take
is.
a picture of this
Yes,
before?
and scan it because it
We
works.
could go back to it too.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yes, this
I
is
just noticed
new.
it
I
putting
sent
this presentation together because I wanted to add in the homeschool connection letters.
Yeah.
And when I went to find the homeschool connection letters, I was brought onto this entire site, and I thought, this is a really wonderful opportunity.
Oh yeah, somebody says who I forget who I saw in the hallway, and they were like, "All right, we're putting names on this. We're sending it home." I was like, "Beautiful."
Yeah, good. Yeah, and it's not just a topic review. The homeschool connection letter was a topic review, and now you can actually like punch into every individual lesson, which is really great. The teachers, yes, we shared it out with the teachers last week. So.
It's like always like something.
Yeah, there's always evolving. They really are. They really are. It is a very rich program, so we're lucky to have resources like that. And thank you very much for your questions and attention. I'm going to pass it over to my partner now.
All right, we are. Oh, okay. Building thinkers in literacy. So, how are we pulling our best practice in literacy instruction into our classrooms? We are working with a program called Being a Reader. Being a Reader, we are in our first year of Being a Reader at the 3 to 5 level. We're in our second year of Being a Reader at our primary school grade levels. And Being a Reader is the new name for a program that we have had in district for years, which was Making Meaning and Collaborative through our publisher Collaborative Classroom. When Collaborative Classroom switched into Being a Reader, SIPS, which was our phonics-based program that we had in our primary school, SIPS became a shift into the intervention program. So it's part of the multi-tiered intervention system that we use at the primary school. And Being a Reader pulled in something called SETS. So you might hear your primary students talking about, or their teachers talking about SETS. SETS is the venue or the tool that we use to teach phonics. So it's our resource that we use to teach phonics. I pretty much went through this. So Being a Reader is a research-based program. It actually was recently reviewed by the Reading League, if you're familiar with that site. And the Reading League, what they do is they pull a bunch of different researchers together and reading experts, and they review programs. And Being a Reader got some great scores from the Literacy League as far as all of the components that it offers in its research-based instruction. So we are starting with our foundational skills, and that pulls in word recognition. So basically what we're talking about here is phonological awareness, we're talking about decoding, and we're talking about sight word recognition. And this is according to Scarborough's reading rope. So when we think about reading, we need to think about the fact that our brains are weaving together all of these different skills. It's crazy complex when you think about how the brain learns to read. And word recognition is just one part of that rope, and then the other part of that rope is language comprehension. So we start with our basic word recognition skills in set 1. And set 1, set 2, and set 3 are all sets that are taught within our kindergarten curriculum. So our goal for our students is by the end of kindergarten, we get them into set 3 and moving through set 3. And what you'll see here, this is just like our scope and sequence of what our sets might look like. And these are, this is where we want our students to be as far as the skills that they have acquired in their kindergarten year. And I have copies actually of this for you all to take so you can kind of see where our scope and sequence goes. But what we're working with within our sets is students are learning, they're learning phonics, so they're pulling together sounds and their sound letter associations. We're working with high frequency words, and then they've got decodable books that go along with the skills that the students are being taught. So within small groups, they are placed in a set that's ready for where they're ready to learn, and they're working within small groups in their classrooms, and I can show you what that looks like in a minute, within these sets. So how is this word recognition taught? As I said before, it's taught through sets. This is where kind of our goals are for our students within our primary grades. So at the end of kindergarten, your goal is for our students to complete set 3. Now, I know that in the past we've had, we've associated like, oh, my child's reading at like a letter D, or they're reading at a level O, or they're on this letter level. While the letter levels gave us an idea of where our students were, it's not necessarily as concrete and specific and brain-based as this program here. So I would like, we're going to try to think here right now as far as like completing set 3 is where we want our kids at the end of kindergarten, completing set 5 at the end of first grade, and then moving through sets 6, 7 through 10 in second grade. In second grade, the sets do not necessarily have to go in order. So once our students complete set 6, which is our fluency set, the teachers can kind of play around with the skills that are within those higher sets, because the skills past set 5 and 6, the skills shift. We don't drop our phonemic awareness teaching or our spelling teaching or our sight words, but they shift, the focus shifts into a much more language comprehension-based instruction within the sets.
Sets is just a group of books.
Yes, yes. So, for example, if your child is reading in set 3, and they are learning about the, K, they're learning that the letter C and the letter K both can make a K sound. So they might get a book called Winter Fun within their group, and now they're reading in small group after they are learning what that sound, what those letter associations are with the sound. They're now practicing that within these books. So you might see these books, you might see books like this come home. You might see a paper copy come home. Your students might have access to this on an iPad in the classroom. Yes, the book room, yep. So book room is part of the technology that goes with being a reader, and Book Room, though, the app, as I was trying to like download it onto my computer, and yeah, you need to be on your app, and you have to, yes. So on your iPad, but the kids are so good at it. They like click in their iPad and they know exactly where to go with it. But this is something that your child might be working with the teacher, and again, it might be sent home for practice and repeated readings, which is all part of building not only their confidence and their skills, but also their fluency, and then working with their comprehension too. Because teachers will ask questions. They'll, as the students are reading these books, they'll say to them, what is going on? Who is the character? What is the setting in this book? They're pulling all of that language in as well. Okay, so what do these set rotations look like in the classroom? So these are just an example of what a student might, what a teacher, the teacher end of things might look like, and students might look like as far as their rotation through meeting with teachers in small groups. Being a Reader and Collaborative Classroom built sets to be taught in small groups. Some of the other phonics programs out there that you might hear about or know about, Foundations, which is based off of the Wilson program, or in Gillingham, those are often set to be taught within whole group instruction. So one of the reasons why we like sets here is because it has that focus of small group instruction. So if you have a child who is ready to move past set 1 and those sounds and the letter association in set 1, then they might test out of set 1. And they're just starting in set 2 based off of our initial assessments that come with our program, because there are assessments along the way that we use. We use assessments in the beginning of the year to see where our students' knowledge falls so that we can place them in the right spot and meet them where they are as learners, which is one of the really nice components of this program. And so with that, we will then say, okay, so you'll see that this room here, set 1 is blue, so they might have the blue group. So you've got kids in set 1, you've got kids in set 4, and you've got kids in set 2. So do you see how this like shows the, now if we had all of these set 4 kids and they were hanging out learning these set 1 skills, it's not meeting them where they are. So the beauty of sets is that it meets the kids where they are. Now with sets, about every 4 weeks, there's an assessment that the teacher does with the students. So she will run through the skills that are being taught or that have been taught to make sure that the student has about 80% mastery. That's what we're looking for with Being a Reader, 80% mastery. If they hit that 80% mastery mark, then we move them into the next week of that set. Or if they're at the end of the set, then we move them into the next set. If they don't hit that 80% mastery mark, then it shows the teacher exactly where that child might need to be reinforced. And so they can go back, and there are, push this back here. If you see these practice and reteach books, there are practice and reteach lessons that go with the sets also. So our teachers can pull right back into these. They can work with those students who need that reinforcement in that skill that they're just missing, right? And get them where they need to be in order for them to move on. All right, so with this, we wanted to show you what a classroom might look like that's got all of this going on with it within a period or a day. So we have some kindergarten classrooms right here. And if you notice, this is kind of like the room at a glance. And we have 2 teachers. We have an instructional assistant who's working with a group. This teacher is currently working with students on high frequency words and sight words. This little group over here, you can't really see, is looking to this child who's pointing to one of those words on a word wall. So they're like using that interactively. And they were also getting ready to move into the next part of their lesson, which was working with actually reading after they did their sight word reviews. Here is a teacher is using choral reading with students, and they're working as a team, moving through a text. And these little guys are on the technology piece, so they're in their technology rotation. So there's always so much going on. You walk into a little classroom like this, and you're like, whoa, there's a million things happening here. But it's all good stuff, and the students are all engaged in what they're doing and they're learning.
Great thinking.
Yes.
It really is.
Here's some more little learners in action. More of a kindergarten classroom. They're moving through some rotations, working with words over here. Same sort of thing, working with our sight words up here. This is a second grade classroom. This classroom, this particular lesson was. Oh. This particular classroom discussion, this was part of the whole group component of being a reader. There are, while we have all of our small groups going in sets, there's also a whole group component to our being a reader lessons. And the whole group happens with, I'm going to speak to that in a minute, that happens more with language comprehension at the lower grades. This is a second grade room, and as you get older and move up into the second grade and elementary classrooms, word study also happens more in a whole group lesson. So the words on the board right here were polysyllabic, so they have multiple syllables to them, and the students do learn the word polysyllabic as we move along. And the teacher had asked the students what they notice about the words. And so they were raising their hand, and one student said, well, they all have a suffix. Second grade. I know, I was impressed too. But this is this program, this is what it's doing. And she said, they all have a suffix. And she said, you're right, they all have a suffix. What suffixes do you see? And they started telling the teacher what suffixes they saw, and she asked them, where does a suffix happen? Where do you see a suffix? It comes at the end of the word. These are all things that the students were answering that they had learned in their lessons. And she said, okay, so can you look at this second column? What do you notice about those words? And they looked at them for a minute, and one little girl said, you can do them all. You can kind of feel or do that, because it's like carefully, helpfully, joyfully. And she was like, yes, you can. That is something, but what else are we noticing? And another little guy raised his hand, and he was like, there's two suffixes. Those words have two suffixes. She said, you're absolutely right. So that was where the lesson was going, where we're talking about breaking down words into different parts and recognizing that there's this root and base component of a word, and then there are suffixes to the word, which this work then leads into students developing the skills to see words that they are unfamiliar with, that as we get older, we haven't orthographically mapped, and we can't read them with automaticity or know what they mean. And it helps them break those words down and notice, like, oh, there's a suffix here, and this is what that suffix means, and that suffix actually makes the word an adjective or an adverb. It's giving them that language. So yes, Dibbles is, Dibbles, do they do this every day? No, Dibbles is a screener. Dibbles is a screener. So Dibbles is a screener that we use 3 times a year for our K-3 students. Now, we can progress monitor a child at any point with our progress monitoring component with Dibbles, but it's something that as a district we consistently do 3 times a year. And it's a screener for dyslexia, basically. It's one of the screeners that, there's multiple screeners out there, and we chose to use Dibbles as a district. And it's what we use to help screen our children who might be struggling a little bit with decoding and with their phonics skills. As students move into the elementary level and in the grade 3 grouping, we do also use the information that we get from Dibbles as part of what we look at to see if a child might need that extra reinforcement and kind of being pulled out of the classroom for a little while in to go to some Orton Gillingham work and do a little bit more intensive work with words. And we use it at our K to 2 level to see if students, it's part of like the MTSS, if we need to grab that child for a little while and give them that extra push in.
And can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
So right now you probably won't know how your child is doing on Dibbles, but you will know if they didn't score that well on it, because then they will be put in our tip intervention services, and we'll have like Orton or Wilson, and you'll know. But actually next year they're changing the law, and we do have to communicate the scores for Dibbles, so everyone will get that. We're working on how we want to share those out with you, but you will get your Dibbles results 3 times a year for next year. But most parents, if you're watching, and thank you for watching, but if you'll know next year. Yeah, but if you if you don't get any information, that's good news. But next year, everyone will know. It's going to be mandated that you have to share the Dibble scores as well.
But your teachers have, your child's teachers do have that information, and they are looking at it and using it. So we might see a child dip in an area a little bit, and we're like, oh, what's going on there? So that discussion will happen amongst the team, amongst colleagues, to say like, okay, I had this child dip a little bit. We're looking here and here. They're really on target with sets. So is it that they dipped because of the assessment? Did they dip because the sight words that Dibbles asks them to use we haven't gotten to yet, because that happens sometimes. Is it the time component, because they're timed with certain sections of Dibbles? So is that why they're pulling back a little bit, and it's just not as automatic, but they have the skill, and we just need to work with them on that fluency? So there's lots of different ways that we use it. And this I thought was so fun. There was a little kindergarten class that was using, the teacher had typed in, and a couple of the kindergarten classes use this, the teacher had typed in their high frequency words into a little like game that she had found, and she spins the wheel, and they wait, and then they guess what word's going to come up, and then the word pops up on the screen, and they yell the word out. They're like, "They!" And then they write it down. They have a little paper that they write it down on, and then they practice writing the word to help them remember it. But it's just little fun things like that are happening in our classrooms that our kids are getting excited about. That was a really good conversation that happened in that second grade group now. So how does this then move up into our upper grades with word recognition? I kind of hit on it already, but as our students get older, the word recognition teaching gets a little bit more complex, and it shifts more from decoding and into understanding the parts of a word. So talking about morphemes and multiple meaning words, and looking at what that actually looks like. So this is more of what like a 4th or 5th grade child might experience within their classroom, working in their word study block. So we have students learning about homophones. We have them looking at multiple meanings. They practice. They pick which one they think, which one works in this sentence. Then they do their own sentences within their word study notebooks. We are working with adding suffixes to base words, so that work that you saw in 2nd grade pulls right into 3rd grade, because this is from a 3rd grade book. Moving into using sentences, using a word as, the word print as a verb, and then using print as a noun. So our program is really pulling into that grammar component that we had been missing as far as the structure of it goes in the past.
I mean, my kids are in 2nd grade, but I'm just curious because I don't get a lot of the writing.
It's in a book.
Okay, so do we see this?
No, because it's in their work.
So at the end of, this was like another thing that we had been talking about. At the end of the units, definitely in 3 through 5, you should see these books coming home at the end of the units. I know you have it. Are you seeing it? Sometimes. Okay. Yeah, that would be the end of the unit. Hmm. Yeah.
You can see that that's only in grades 3 through 5. K through 2, you're not seeing the word. No.
K
I
through.
didn't even know these were in.
But I don't know if they.
Yeah. So right, this is 3 through 5 has different books. K to 2, they do have a book, but it's like a much, yeah, it's not as robust as this one. You should more in K to 2. You should see like word sorts coming home. You should see those sorts of things. Maybe packets of like little cutouts of words here and there. Okay, so we can work on that.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask, when you're saying word study, so are you studying more just for definitions and for language, or are you talking more about spelling and like encoding?
It's all encompassing. Word study is all encompassing. So when we are working in our word study block, students could be working on, depending on the day, depending on the lesson, they might be working on encoding, they might be working on spelling skills, they might be working through a word sort. They might be doing more work with this where they're breaking down parts of words or using words in certain ways.
Yeah, and then is that more like for the second grade, is that more written, or is that all, like, are these more like oral conversations, and like, are we talking?
So a lot of the written work that happens in second grade might be like whiteboard work in the classroom where students sort the words, and then now they've got words in different groups based off of if they're working with like consonant, vowel, consonant, E words. So maybe they might have, if we have words that are working with long A, long I, long U, so they would put those words into a sort and then maybe write them down in a column. They might write them into the word study notebook. There's different ways that it happens. What you won't see necessarily is like a list come home of like, these are definitely the words that you're being tested on at the end of this week. That's not part of what our program does or how it works. You should be practicing your sight words, yes.
And
So
just
those sight
all of them
words,
none of them do that.
Yeah,
Wilson doesn't
so-
do that, Orton doesn't do that. That's like very, I know, but a lot of like the spelling words. So,
My daughter has a test.
yeah, at
yeah.
the end of the
and you will.
unit,
Yeah, but it's not the way we like had spelling tests and I had like the words and we had to learn how to memorize. This is like the way that all these programs, there's a flow to it, and like teaching kids about the prefix and the suffix and the root and yeah. So they don't get like that. We don't do like that list anymore. I know. I do like that list though, but I.
Scope and sequence for what is expected for second and like third grade in terms of like with Wilson, because I have a Wilson certificate.
yeah.
No,
Yeah, it's on Rubicon.
It's in our curriculum.
Yeah. I mean,
So we have it posted.
because like what I'm noticing with my son specifically is
yeah.
that like we're
I mean, this is our set scope and sequence. That might help you too.
like nothing's getting like what I'm noticing is orally we're good, but in terms of writing and spelling we're not comprehending it there.
Right. Yeah, I can do that. So you said he's in second grade. As we move forward, it should be, you should start to see that practice more often in a more concrete way in that sense. But I will say, again, that's also a conversation that we had a little bit earlier in the year, like 2 months ago, with our second grade team and our third grade team about students encoding and where we are with it and how we are seeing this struggle. So it is something that we've got like eyes and ears to, and we're working through getting them some more practice and just being more mindful of the fact that we need to have them practicing a little bit more.
The reading portion is more focused on the decoding, and then like the writing is its own period in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Yeah, the encoding part of it. So next year,
I will say, I was gonna ask, like, we get math homework every night, but we don't get like
writing, or like spelling, you know. So
Mhm.
does that change? Spelling in first grade. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. We get like the math homework, like you said, and then
Mhm.
bag of books.
You guys asking for more homework?
Well, I know.
You said- from your mouth, from your mouth. From your mouth.
But in third grade, from my experience, I only have one fourth grader, but they do start the spelling. Which
Yes.
I really like. I think it's great just to like keep the creativity in second grade, allow them just to write without thinking about it. Well, not thinking about it. You know what I mean? Like more free writing. And then my daughter could not spell in second grade at all, and now she's in fourth grade and she's amazing at everything. You know, like, and I really like the spelling test, and I think third grade's a great transition year to start the spelling test. And I don't know if I'm supposed to call them tests. It was her teacher just on Fridays. It was like 10 words they were going to review, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And there's no spelling test, and she started not being able to spell, and now she can spell.
And that's the expectation, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It's developmental. So yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's all thinking about it on the developmental component and what their brains are ready to learn and where they are.
That's standard, like third grade is when the spelling expectation comes into play, like correct spelling.
Yeah, I think I mean
I just mean
I-
like statewide, like is that just like blanketed?
no, I mean there's certain there if we look at the standards, there are spelling or encoding standards that start a little bit earlier. I wouldn't say it's like at
More like sight.
first grade, but it's sight words, yes. As they move into those high, taking that high frequency word and practicing it so it becomes a sight word for them. But I do think that as we keep moving through with where we are with being a reader, we're going to see that it click. Because it's,
And just
we're,
remember, this is only year 1 of the K to 2 being a reader. This is year 2 for 3 to 5.
flip.
Oh, yeah, so, say that, so that's, say that again.
So it's year two for K to 2, and it's year 1 for 3 to 5
Okay.
of this particular program, which is way more robust than what we were doing with Making
Tell
Meaning.
them what we're getting next year.
So bringing in the writing piece of it, we are in the, it was just approved, so I'm so happy about this. Because we've been piloting it in grades K to 5. One classroom in each grade level has been piloting this program, but we are shifting our writing program as well to being a writer. So being a writer is the complement to being a reader. It's the same publishing company that makes this program, and in looking at our students' writing and in thinking about things like sentence structure and spelling or encoding and some of the skills that our students maybe needed a little bit more structure in its teaching moving forward. We looked at a few different, we researched, and there's really not a lot of writing programs out there, believe it or not. You would think that there would be more, but there's not. So there's some, but not, and there's some that are just K to 2, and then you've got to switch for 3 to 5, and we were looking at something that we could have for K to 5. So we found being a writer, we looked at the materials, we liked how it looked, and we started piloting in our classrooms. And our kids that are working in with the program right now, our teachers are like, they're raving about it. I mean, in kindergarten, I was in one of the kindergarten classrooms, and I walked in, and she's like, okay, tell Mr. Shakis what we're learning about. And they're like, nouns, we're learning what a noun is. And they're naming all of these nouns. And as silly as that seems, it was so, they then are learning like where a noun is placed in a sentence, and they are learning that basic sentence structure. And she said to me, that the younger grades have noticed that because it's connecting to reading, everything is just pulling together for those guys. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. So it's next year we'll dive into being a writer.
Will all the grades get it next year?
K-5. Yes. Yep. Okay, moving into the next component. We have only hit one half of our rope here. Moving into our next component, which is language comprehension. So language comprehension is taught explicitly whole group and small group. And in our younger grades, it's going to look in a whole group instruction with a read aloud to the class, and then questions or skills that are specifically leaning in a direction. So like this particular group was wondering about penguins, so they learn how to think and question a topic. This was in preparation for their little trip that they're going on. And so they're thinking about all of these different things that they wonder prior to even diving into learning about penguins. So they've got all these really good questions going on, and this strategy is brought up into 5th grade also, where students flip the wonder into actual questions. And then these strategies are reinforced in small group through working with our books in our decodables and in our earlier sets, and then moving into more of like comprehension based, where our books might be a little bit bigger and the kids might be reading some with the teacher, moving into book clubs and reading more independently, and then discussing it with their peers, and then coming back to the teacher for more lessons surrounding the books. So it just depends on where our learners are, how this plays out. So moving into what it looks like in our classroom. This is a 4th grade classroom. They were working through a book club, so you'll see this student has Post-its. These guys are looking back in their books. There's other students still working on their student response book over here, and then some other kids are on their Chromebooks. That classroom was having a discussion about ebooks, so the benefit of ebooks, and then they decided that they were going to call paperback books P-books. So, so it was this whole discussion on ebooks versus P-books, and who likes what better. And one of the little guys in book club was like, well, I don't really like the ebooks because it's not that many pages, and I want more pages, because he was looking at Epic. I want more pages. And then, it was this whole really philosophical, funny conversation, but really good thinking, and that's the thing that I really like about the language comprehension piece of this program. It really promotes good thinking, and it promotes really good talk about the book. That talk is transferring into students writing about their thinking also. So there is that component in this program as well, writing about reading. And you'll see here what I know about animal conservation before reading. What do I think I know? And then the next part of this is, what did I learn? What did you learn about this as we're moving through the text? So this is more in the language comprehension, thinking about knowledge building and what do words mean. So students are learning about terraniums in their books that they're reading. This is a 5th grade classroom, and then they do some word work with that terranium. Terra means earth, geo means earth, so they're now building knowledge there. And then this is a 4th grade extension activity that one of our classes did, where they were learning about commensalism and how animals interact, or symbiotic relationships, sorry, to be technical. They were learning about symbiotic relationships, and they each picked the symbiotic relationship that they thought worked, that they wanted to learn about the most, or that they appreciated the most. So they created quick posters. That was like a quick extension activity that students did during a reading period. I think that's it.
That's all we have.
The parent component of this also, you should be getting letters home at the end of every unit. So that letter just looks like it's a parent-home connection, and it talks about, it has different parts to it depending on what the students focused on. It'll tell you what they focused on in vocabulary that unit, so you can reinforce that. It tells you some comprehension strategies that the students worked on. And what's the other one? There's like 5 different ones. Oh, like read together. It gives you like something that you could, it talks about a strategy that you could use as far as reading them together. It looks similar to this. Yes. Yes. There's one in primary too. Yeah. Okay. More things to work on.
Do you want to show them what these books are and what these books are used for? Like what books these are for? This is set 10.
Oh yes, this is. We talked about book clubs. You might see this with book clubs. This might go in small group work. Yeah. So these are those. Yes, so this is set 10. So actually, because we are just in this program in the elementary level for the first year, and we're in year 2 at primary, some of our 3rd and 4th grade teachers are using sets because the students haven't been exposed to the books or the materials yet, and they are helpful for them. So our teachers are taking small groups and they're using the resources that we have available, that they have available to them, and they're like, okay, well, I have a student who is struggling with fluency, or I have a student who needs some more reinforcement with working with character or working with setting, and they'll pull a book that's specific to that skill, and they will pull a group and they'll work with those students within those sets. So they do float into the elementary grades also, depending on where our students are, because they go up to set 12. Yeah. And then we've got book club groups too. So there's a book club component in 3 to 5 that also has, not only does it have a couple of novels to it, but it also has smaller texts or shorter texts that the teachers are also using for reinforcement of skills. There's a reteaching book that goes with each topic, each unit also. So there's a lot of materials that our teachers have access to help the kids with whatever area they need to either, be pushed to the next level in, or to have reinforcement. Yes. So we say like in the primary grades you're learning to read, and as you move through elementary you're reading to learn. So our kids in our 3 to 5 age range, they're kind of like they're riding that wave, we should say. Some of them are at the top of the wave and have already learned to read, and they're ready to roll. And then others are still working, they're still paddling, they're still paddling on that learning to read, and that's okay too. As long as we're meeting them where they need to be met and giving them those skills that they need, because as we know, it takes some kids longer. Sometimes a student can see a sight word or a high frequency word, and it becomes a sight word for them within like 3 exposures. Other kids, it takes 100. We all learn differently, so it's just being cognizant of that and being aware of it, and giving our kids grace but the supports that they need all at the same time to get them where they want them to be, and down the road, as like Tina has kids who are graduated from college and coming to college, and we're getting ready to apply for colleges, and it's wild, the ride that personally, my own guy who needed to go through the Wilson program is now, in honors English. Like, who knew? Taking AP next year. Yeah. For what? I'm like, okay, have at it, buddy. So they're all different.
Yeah. And in closure, we really do appreciate your support. We know that this is something that happens not just in the classroom, but at home too. We chose this quote specifically to end our presentation to you with, because we know that curiosity is really where students get all of their knowledge and strive to learn. So please continue to build your child's curiosity with reading and experiences. I know we just talked about my 22-year-old son, who's now an accountant in Red Bank, but when we used to drive along the road, I mean, we would look at license plates and just look at the numbers on the license plates and add them together or multiply them or just do silly little things to build curiosity. So we appreciate your support home. We hope that you appreciate our support here at school, but our teachers and our students are doing a really wonderful job, and we appreciate your support as well. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.
questions do you have for us? Oh, yes, they have handwriting. No, they do it in third. And then they have it in fourth, too, but it's usually more towards